Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to leave a comment down below with what your baseball picks are for Tuesday's games. Now, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at Pickdawgz.com. I'm running a daily $15 MLB best bet, so check it out at Pick Dawgz Premium. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Tuesday, May 31st. First up, we see a doubleheader between the Minnesota Twins and the Detroit Tigers. Game 1, we should see Devin Smeltzer and Ronnie Garcia. And then in Game 2, we should see Cole Sands and Joey Wentz. Now, these are subject to change, of course. And you guys know me, I tread lightly in doubleheader games, and that's not going to be any different in this one. I think this is a really tough doubleheader, to be honest with you. I do think the Tigers have a bit of an advantage in Game 1. We saw on Monday that the Tigers bullpen was able to win that game for them in that 7-5 contest. And I do think in Game 1, the Tigers bullpen is going to benefit. I don't think really any of these starting pitchers, even in Game 2, are going to last too long in this game. Probably 4 or 5 innings at the most. But I do think Detroit has an advantage with Ronnie Garcia on the mound, at least through the first few innings. And then in Game 2, I do think the Twins have an advantage of getting to Joey Wentz. Joey Wentz, his ERA is above 20 right now. Obviously, it's not going to stay that high as we continue on. He's only pitched 4 innings this season. But we saw him get absolutely killed by one of the weaker offenses in the American League against the Athletics. 2 2/3 innings, he gave up 7 hits, 6 earned runs, and 2 walks in that one. Not a guy I can back right now. I know Cole Sands' ERA is a little steep, but he just got really good strikeout stuff and doesn't really walk a lot of batters, so that's what I like to see from starting pitching. So I'm going to take the Tigers in Game 1 and the Twins in Game 2, but certainly neither game I'm crazy about. Next up, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Cleveland Guardians. Daniel Lynch and Cal Quantrill are your starters here. Now, I understand why the Guardians are favorites in this game. Obviously, they have the better record. They're playing at home here, and their starting pitcher has a better ERA and better numbers overall in Cal Quantrill. But I still think there's some value on the Kansas City Royals in this spot. You know, the Royals are going to be sending Daniel Lynch to the mound, a left-handed pitcher. And as we know, the Guardians have really struggled against lefties this season, where they're ranked dead last in baseball in team OPS against left-handed pitching and 28th in baseball in isolated power against lefties. On the other side, Cal Quantrill, although he's got good numbers this season, he is a guy that I worry about in terms of regression. Doesn't strike out a lot of batters, in the bottom 28th percentile in expected batting average, bottom 34th percentile in expected slugging and expected ERA. I think the Royals can put a few runs on the board early here. I think Lynch, not a guy that I back too often. I do see a regression in his game also. But like I said, the Guardians have just not hit lefties at all this season. So I do think it's beneficial for Lynch being a lefty in this spot. And we're getting such a good price with Kansas City here on the road. I got to take the money line here, getting the plus money with the Royals. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Jakob Yunis and Ranger Suarez are the projected starters here. Now, I mentioned in Monday's video that I thought the Monday's game was pretty much a coin toss kind of game. It's why the line was a pick'em at each team being minus 110. And the game went into extra innings. Doesn't get more coin flip than that. Basically the shootout of baseball. But in this particular matchup, I think it's another similar spot where this is kind of an up-in-the-air kind of game. The Phillies are a little bit bigger favorites here, so I do think there is some value on the Giants. But as far as my side, I'm going to take the over here. Jakob Yunis is starting to get hit. He's got a 2.76 ERA, but I don't think that's going to last much longer. He's given up a home run in each of his last 4 starts, and we've seen in his career that he's had issues with the long ball. But on the other side, Ranger Suarez has not been sharp this season for Philadelphia, and now he's running into a San Francisco lineup that's number 4th in baseball in team OPS against lefties and number 2 in baseball in isolated power against lefties. So I think there's all the value on San Francisco here, but I also like the over in the Giants-Phillies. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Angels taking on the New York Yankees. Noah Syndergaard and Jordan Montgomery are your probable starters. Now, we're getting the Yankees at a really good price here at home. I know they're dealing with some injuries both in the lineup and the bullpen, but it's really hard to pass the Yankees at this kind of price at Yankee Stadium where they've had so much success, 17-7 this season. And the Angels are off to a good start this year, but they did struggle quite a bit against the Blue Jays in their last series. And they're only 12-9 on the road this year. Noah Syndergaard going for the Angels. Normally, Noah Syndergaard draws a really good price for the teams that he pitches for, but I don't think he's pitching like the Noah Syndergaard we've seen in the past. And on the road this year, Noah Syndergaard is 1-2 with a 5.93 ERA. He hasn't really faced the toughest of lineups lately, facing the Orioles, Red Sox, Rays, and then Rangers twice. Now he's facing a Yankees lineup that plays so well at Yankee Stadium and has hit right-handed pitching and left-handed pitching all season long. To me, Jordan Montgomery has pitched well enough for me to back him in this spot. I'm going to take the Bronx Bombers here on the money line. In our next game, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Now, we don't have an official starter listed for the Orioles quite yet, but we do see George Kirby as the starter for the Mariners. I do think this is a good spot to take the Baltimore Orioles here. We know the O's play really well at Camden Yards, where right now they have an above 500 record, while the Mariners, they really struggle on the road as they have a well below 500 record. So right off the bat, I'm leaning towards the O's just based on the trends there. When you look at this pitching matchup, George Kirby, I think he's got a bright future in the major leagues, but I don't think he's MLB ready quite yet. We saw him pitch really well in his first start in the big leagues, but he's gotten progressively worse with each start. We saw him he's given up 3 home runs in his last 2 outings combined. In his last 10 innings, which is his last 2 outings against the Red Sox and A's, he's given up 16 base hits, 9 earned runs, 3 home runs as well. He's got good strikeout stuff, but he's also hanging a lot of pitches, and teams are getting a lot of good exit velos off of him as well. I think the Orioles bats do a number on him. They're solid against right-handed pitching this season, and I'm going to take the Orioles here on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Lucas Giolito and Kevin Gausman are your starters. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the price on the money line for this game, I was a little surprised to see the Blue Jays as steep of favorites as they were. But doing a little research, I think it makes a lot of sense why Toronto is the big favorites. Obviously, we saw this weekend the Blue Jays bats start to come alive, especially in that Sunday game, 11-10 victory for Toronto. And they played really well in that road series against a good Angels team. Now you have your ace on the mound, Kevin Gausman, who's been sensational for Toronto. Seems like a great signing that they made. They lost Robbie Ray to free agency, but they brought in Gausman, a 2.25 ERA is 11th in the league, 65 strikeouts is 8th in the league, a 1.04 whip is also top 20 in baseball. He doesn't allow a lot of walks, doesn't allow a lot of home runs. Like I said, he strikes out a good amount of batters. Coming off a 6-inning shutout performance against the Cardinals with 8 strikeouts. And although Lucas Giolito has a sub-3 ERA, I do see some worry signs with him in his game. The home run ball is starting to worry me. He's given up at least 1 home run in 4 of his last 5 starts, with 6 home runs combined in that stretch. The walks are also an issue at times for Giolito, and he really even hasn't faced the toughest of lineups. The Red Sox, decent lineup, but the Royals, the Cubs. So I do think the Blue Jays are going to be a very tough matchup for him, especially on the road. I'm going to take the Blue Jays here on the money line. In our next game, we see the Cincinnati Reds taking on the Boston Red Sox. Now, we don't see an official lineup for this game quite yet, so we could see a pitching change. But at the moment, we see Luis Castillo and Michael Wacha as the projected starters. Now, I like the over in this game, whether these are the starters or not. We have 2 teams that play a lot of games in hitter-friendly ballparks. We've got 2 starters currently that are susceptible to giving up runs and have struggled a little bit lately. And we've got 2 bullpens I cannot trust at all, matched with the fact that both of these lineups have done well recently also. I think there's going to be a lot of runs in this game. Michael Wacha, the Red Sox in general, they've played so many games in a row, it seems. They've played the Orioles, I think, 5 times, and a doubleheader as well. And an already weak bullpen has been really stretched lately. That's not a good sign playing at Fenway Park. And the Cincinnati Reds, they're only a few days removed from that 20-run performance. They're playing a lot better baseball offensively than they did the beginning of this season. And I do think they're going to be able to put up a fight, especially against Wacha, who's coming off a 7-hit, 5-earned run home run performance against the White Sox of all teams, a team that hasn't really hit righties that well. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair and a pretty high-scoring series as well. I'm going to take the over in the first game of the Red Sox series. In our next game, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the New York Mets. Patrick Corbin and Trevor Williams are the projected starters here. Now, I know it seems like I've been picking on the New York Mets lately, and they've burnt me quite a few times, but I just cannot back Trevor Williams at this kind of price for the Mets. Minus 170 and Trevor Williams do not go in the same sentence. I know Patrick Corbin has had his fair share of struggles, but so have the Mets against lefties this year, where they're outside the top 15 in team OPS against lefties, and they're 19th in the league in isolated power against lefties. Patrick Corbin finally got his first win of the season after starting 0-7, and he pitched well enough to get the W for Washington last time. We went 6 1/3, 7 hits, 3 earned runs, and 3 strikeouts against a decent Colorado team. I think the Nationals bats can back him up. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, so I lean towards the over as well. But I'm going to take the 1.5 runs with the Nationals. I just cannot pass the value we're getting going up against Trevor Williams, who really just has not pitched well in 2022. In our next game, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Blake Snell and Adam Wainwright are the starters here. Now, I do think Blake Snell is somebody that we're going to get a lot of value betting on later on in the season. We saw in 2021 with San Diego, Snell really struggled at the beginning of the season, but after the All-Star break, he was phenomenal for San Diego, and he started the season late because he was injured. He's only pitched 2 times now this year against the Phillies and the Brewers, and hasn't pitched too well in either of those starts, but he's striking out batters. He's just having issues with the walks and the home runs. I don't think this is going to be the spot where he sharpens up, though, unfortunately for Snell, as he's facing a very, very good St. Louis Cardinals lineup that's number 1 in baseball in team OPS against lefties and number 4 in baseball in isolated power. Adam Wainwright has had his fair share of struggles. He had a rough outing last time out against the Brewers, where he gave up 10 base hits in that one. The home runs have also hurt Wainwright recently, which is not usually what we see from him. He's a guy that usually keeps the ball in the yard. But against a Padres lineup that has not hit righties well recently, I think in the last 3 weeks or so, they've been near the bottom in team OPS against righties and isolated power. This is a spot where I have to continue to fade Snell, but I do say watch out for him in the end of the season. I think he's going to be a really sharp starter, and we're going to get a good price with him later on because of his early season struggles. In our next game, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Chicago Cubs. 2 lefties on the mound for this one, Eric Lauer and Justin Steele. Now, I do think there is some value with the home dog in this spot. I know it's not easy betting the Cubs, let me tell you, but the Cubs are 13th in the league in team OPS against lefties, while the Brewers are all the way down to 23rd in the league. So advantage Cubs goes right there. You look at Justin Steele, obviously a worse ERA than Eric Lauer, but I don't think he's necessarily a worse pitcher, at least by not too much. You know, Eric Lauer has good strikeout stuff, but he gets hit pretty hard at spots, giving up home runs, and his average exit velocity and hard hit percentage this season, one of the worst, really in the National League, but certainly on the Brewers' rotation this season. Justin Steele's biggest issue has been the walks this season, and he's got good strikeout stuff, and he doesn't really give up too much hard contact, but the walks have hurt him at times this season, but recently not so much, which is, a sign of improvement there. I think this is going to be a toss-up game. It really kind of depends on where the wind's blowing. If it's blowing out, this is going to be a higher scoring game like we saw in game 1 of that doubleheader on Monday. I'm going to take the Cubs here. I think the value's on them as the home dog, getting the plus money on the money line. In our next game, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Texas Rangers. Again, in this spot, we see 2 lefty starting pitchers in Ryan Yarbrough and Martin Perez. Now, I've got to tip my cap to Martin Perez. I did not see this kind of season coming. It's the end of May, and he's got a 1.6 ERA for the Rangers. He's a guy that I usually have faded in the last couple seasons when he's on the mound, but can't do it this season or in this spot. The Rangers have hit lefties well this year overall, and they're facing Ryan Yarbrough, who didn't look too bad against the Yankees last time out, but overall, I kind of have mixed signs with him. Doesn't allow too much of hard contact, because he is a pitch-to-contact guy, but doesn't strike out a lot of batters, has had issues with the walks at times. I think the Rangers are the play, in my opinion. They're a much better team in terms of team OPS against lefties this season compared to Tampa Bay. I'm going to take the Rangers here on the money line and continue to back Martin Perez. He is pitching lights-out baseball. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Colorado Rockies. Now, I think there's officially something wrong with German Marquez's game this year. 1-5 with a 6.3 ERA. We're this far into the season where we need to really worry about his game right now. And I think the Marlins, although they didn't take advantage of the Rockies pitching staff on Monday, I think this is a good bounce back spot for Miami, a team that has hit righties well this year overall. Marquez just given up homers, walks, base runners, you name it, earned runs galore. And the Marlins right now are number 5 in baseball in team OPS against right-handed pitching. I think they have the upper hand in this spot. I'm going to take the fish here on the money line. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks hosting the Atlanta Braves. Charlie Morton and Humberto Castellanos are your starters for this one. Now, I've mentioned before that I do think Humberto Castellanos is the weakest link in a pretty solid Arizona rotation, and I do worry about him quite a bit against the Braves in this spot. Charlie Morton, he hasn't pitched really well in 2022, but he has, in the last 4 games that he has pitched in, the Braves have won all 4 of those games, and in 3 of those 4, they covered the run line too, and those weren't against too easy teams: Phillies, Marlins, Padres, and Brewers. Some solid teams right there. Now you're facing the Arizona Diamondbacks that I'm sure have outperformed my expectations thus far, but I really cannot trust Castellanos in this spot. An ERA above 5 this season. I think the Braves have the better lineup, the better starter, the better bullpen as well. Give me the Braves here on the money line. In our next game, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Oakland Athletics. Pretty good pitching matchup we have on our hands here in Christian Javier and Frankie Montas. Now, I've mentioned that I do believe that I prefer Christian Javier as a reliever than a starter, but he really proved me wrong last time out. 5 2/3 innings against the Guardians, 9 strikeouts, no earned runs allowed. At times, his fastball can be hit pretty hard. We saw him give up 2 home runs in his last 3 outings combined, but he is pitching well as a starter thus far, and until he shows me any kind of signs of regression, I'm going to continue to take him, especially with the better lineup here. Frankie Montas has pitched well for Oakland, but he's got a 2-4 record for a reason. His team does not back him up offensively, and we saw that on Monday where the Astros won a 5-1 contest. Oakland offense was really quiet in that game, and I think it's going to be quiet in this spot again. Give me the Astros here at a pretty good price on the road. And in our final game of the night, we see the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, we don't have an official starter listed for the Pirates quite yet, so we don't have an official lineout also. But to me, this is going to be a Dodgers run line play or pass. The Pirates offense is not in a good spot right now. They're also dealing with a ton of injuries in that lineup. And Julio Urias, although he wasn't able to get the win for the Dodgers last time out, it wasn't really his fault. They only gave up 1 earned run in 6 innings of pretty solid baseball. His lineup scored no runs in that game in a 1-0 loss. I think the Dodgers get to the Pirates in this spot a lot better, especially if this is a bullpen game for Pittsburgh. Give me the Dodgers on the run line, but not my favorite game on the board. And that's it. Those are the games for Tuesday, May 31st. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave that like and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.